5, spannend. Und los. Hello everyone and warm welcome to our next Coder meetup on digitization and circular economy. I'm Leonhard Nima, I'm one of the co-founders of N3XTCODER, and today I'm here with Ina Budde. Ina, you're the co-founder of circular.fashion. You're in Berlin right now, so hello from Munich to Berlin.
Yay, hey from Berlin to everyone. Great that you joined.
Yes, so hello from Munich, hello from Berlin, hello to everyone out there. Great to have you on board today, Ina, for our virtual meetup. Usually, as you might know, we do the N3XTCODER meetups at our home base at the Spielfeld Digital Hub in Berlin. These days, we're going to take this online, so that's why we're here together with you. I'm very excited to have Ina on board for the next 1 hour. We're going to talk about circular economy in fashion and the role of digitization. Maybe quick rules, a little bit about the meetup. So we're going to have an interview style with you, but of course we want to make it interactive. So everyone in the audience, you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, we have our tool Slido where you can post your questions. So we'll only good questions. I think that's important. Please put in good questions there for Ina and we will pick the best ones to answer them. And we will also have a poll functionality. So once in a while, we will ask you a few questions and we want to hear from you in that poll and learn a little bit more about your opinion. So are we good to go, ready to get started, Ina?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Excited to have it started.
Full speed into the evening. As I mentioned, our big topic is circular economy. And I think this would be a good start to learn from you, what does circular economy actually mean? I mean, it's a big topic right now. It's a buzzword. There's a lot of attention, but not everybody, I think, has a good understanding. So we want to learn from you as an expert. Tell me more about circular economy.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, in the end, this time, like we're living in a very linear system today. We have a lot of like resources, valuable resources that we extract that are very important for essential needs of people, and we make new products out of it and waste them often quite soon. So like we take, make, and waste it. And on the one hand, like the resources are getting more scarce and scarce. And on the other hand, yeah, we produce a lot of waste because when we throw something away, there is not really a way. And so the circular economy takes a totally different approach. And this is also something like our vision that we actually want to achieve and bring to the world is an economy that really tackles, that has products always at the highest value, that we really rethink at the very beginning, how can we create a garment or a product, any kind of product, in a way that it can stay at the full value, that we can reuse it again and again for a long time and also recycle it at the highest value.
Okay, thanks for the first intro. But I think one of the big misconceptions out there is probably that people think of circular economy that's all about recycling. But as you mentioned, it starts way earlier in the process. So we have to rethink much more. So it's about the production aspect, then the use, and then the recycling part. Your focus is on fashion. So how does it look like in fashion? You mentioned it's resource intense and so on. So what's particular the situation in fashion?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the fashion industry is a very important topic, like for two reasons. I mean, on the one hand, we're all wearing clothing, right? Like, even though some people might not be that interested in actually fashion, but we all have to wear clothing. And so we need to rethink what are we actually wearing and how can we make it in a more sustainable way. And in the fashion industry, it's a very linear one. So we have 100 billion garments that are produced yearly. Mm-hmm. And actually, we have a lot of CO2 emissions in the textile industry. So if we compare it to other industries, like, for example, the maritime shipping or all flights internationally, the fashion industry has more CO2 emission than both of these two industries together. So it's a very important industry to make a change, to really act against climate change. And yeah, so in the fashion industry, there is also recycling going on, and of course people have thought in the past, like, how can we optimize this more towards a circular economy and like recycling more, taking more healthy materials, but in the end this all just buys us a little bit of time, because we are living on a planet of finite resources. So if we recycle something that has not the same value again, like more a downcycling, we cannot really make a new product out of that. And yeah, actually it would be very curious to hear what people think, how much recycling is actually going on in the textile industry. Maybe we can yeah, have some voices on that.
Okay, that's a good call to action for our audience. So maybe have a quick first poll. What percentage of used clothes are currently recycled globally? Is it 2%? Are we talking about 13%, 37%, or 76%? So head over to Slido on the right-hand side, go to polls, want to hear your answer, and then we're going to discuss the results in a second.
Mhm.
So the results are coming in. Let's wait a second. It keeps changing. So there are quite a few who say 2%, but let's hold on for 1 second. We see it here on the main screen.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
actually we have right now 68% say that 2% of used clothes are recycled globally. We have 31% who say 13% are recycled, and for the other, it's 2% and 0% for 76. So,
wow,
what do you think?
That's an interesting result. I mean, like, fortunately, there is some recycling going on. Actually, it's around about 13% that is recycled. That also means that 87% of it is actually incinerated or landfilled, which is a huge number if we think about like 1 billion garments, 100 billion garments that are produced yearly. But if we look closer to this recycling number, we actually see that it is rather a downcycling today. So I brought you this wonderful example of a more downcycled material. We know this maybe from, yeah, it's kind of filling material that comes into car seats or similar things. So it is recycling, but not really, again, to the same value into clothing. And there are some great innovations actually that came in the past years, which allow to regenerate a textile to the same quality again. And we found this awesome when we learned about this. This is how it rather looks like when we really regenerate it and recycle it to the same quality. So like maybe it was a denim before, and it's actually a white thread in the end. So like if you imagine your jumper or your t-shirt is really becoming a new thread again for something new. And yeah, so we wanted to actually push forward for these innovations to be at scale at the industry, but so far it's not really happening yet. Like, as I mentioned, it's only 1%, and yes, there are different challenges to that that really hold back the industry from transitioning towards a circular economy today. Yeah, yeah, and like, if you want to learn more about these challenges, I can also go deeper into that.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some questions popping in, but I think this would be really interesting. How do we get from this 13% to more towards like 50, 60, 70%? I mean,
Exactly.
I think we need to make huge steps. So what will be the big game changers?
Yeah. So when we started around about 7 years ago to work in this field, we researched a lot of what are actually these hurdles that are holding it back. And it comes down to a lack of transparency in the end, and a lack of interconnection of different stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's three major stakeholders that need to be connected and to exchange information to make it happen. And these are, on the one hand, the designers. and the fashion brands that really need to learn about the requirements of those recyclers, because the recyclers that produce this more high quality recycling, they have certain requirements, like for example which dye stuff was used, or if you have a jumper or like a denim, there is maybe a metal part, a button, and those kind of things can be challenging for them. So designers now need to learn, how can we create a garment in a more recyclable way, and like really responding to these requirements. That's the first big step. And the second point is that we as consumers, we also need to know where the heck should I actually bring back my clothes when I don't want it anymore? Like where is a good return point that actually takes it and brings it to the right recycler? That's the second one. And in the end, like once time has come and the clothing was returned to like a collector, sorting company, they need to identify what is actually in this garment, what materials are in there, and to which recycler would be the best option to bring this garment to. And so we see that for all these tasks to fulfill, we really need more knowledge and transparency that can make it happen then.
Yeah, and when we talk about transparency, this is where digital tools, digital solutions can actually play a big role potentially. And that's something that you have been working on with circular fashion. So maybe tell us a little bit about your approach. How do you try to overcome this challenge?
Sure. So like that's a team of 10 passionates now in Berlin. And we are like have very interdisciplinary backgrounds, like from software engineering to designers, textile experts, sustainability experts. And so we realized that basically we need a holistic solution to that. Because if we would solve only one of those 3 core challenges, we would fail. Like if we only solve one step, the whole mission would fail. So if we really want to create this vision of a circular economy, we need to provide a holistic solution to that. And that was the idea that we founded a platform that can actually create this interconnection between all those stakeholders, that on the one hand addresses the fashion brands and helps them to actually design the clothing in a better way, but then also informs the whole reverse supply chain of users, sorters and recyclers and so on. I can also share maybe a picture of how this looks like in a second. So here you can see the platform that we have built. So on the one hand, you see the design software. So this is a digital tool that really supports fashion brands and designers to take the right decisions. We have a material library there of like more sustainable fabrics, also design guidelines, and also a product check that in the end says, great, well done, the full garment is recyclable. And to really make the information of this product accessible to the reverse supply chain, we equip each garment with the circularity ID, which is basically a label that is sewn into the garment and that can be scanned. And this informs, on the other hand, the users of like where to return it, also sorting companies, which recycler is the best, and can basically make this interconnection that is so much needed in the industry. Yeah, this is how it looks like, but I will now just stop sharing the screen to show it to you how it actually looks like in practice. Because we have a garment here that shows you like there is a little identifier in here, so you can just grab your smartphone and scan it, and be informed about like how to act the best with this garment and what this garment has more of a potential compared to other garments.
Cool. Maybe they're directly a follow-up question, because we have quite a few questions popping up in here and they go in this direction. So as a consumer, how can I be sure that my clothing actually gets recycled? So I understand I scan it, then I know what to do, where to return it. Can I follow the later life cycle? How does it work?
Great question. So what we did as like the very first step is that we built up a partner network like textile collectors and sorters, as well as recyclers. So we picked their brain and asked them, like, what is actually your feedstock requirements? And this is basically the whole basis for this platform. But this also included that they were really, really happy to be on board of such a network and to receive these garments that are actually designed for their systems. And so this partner network is right now across Europe. But we're also investigating in other areas of the world. And so these partners are basically waiting now to get garments. And so usually if users return a garment, you have different choices. Like you can, for example, bring it into a container on the street, or there are also more innovative and other possibilities, like bring it back into a store. Like some companies, some brands collect clothing in a store. Another option is a service called PackMe. So you can actually send it back with a package to a sorter directly. And those sorters, they actually have installed a sorting software that we have developed. So they have a table, and usually, you know, that it's a very manual process. So the garments come onto the table, people are looking at it and try to feel like, is this rather a cotton or is this polyester, and what should I do with it? And our sorting software supports them and tells them what it actually is and where they need to bring it. And yeah, so regarding the question of if you as a user can then trace it, that's a really interesting thought that we also wanted to incorporate. So yes, in the near future, we have we are on the way of building an analysis tool that can tell us, like, once a garment was returned at a sorter and scanned there, to really inform also the user again about the further journey of the garment.
Okay, super interesting. But maybe there also might be some limitations that for the user, or from a user point of view, at some point there might be just too much information out there. I'm just always using the example of tuna that we have now in the supermarket. You can scan and see where it comes from. But ideally, we would need to have this for each and every product in the supermarket. So I'm overwhelmed. I mean, the same for fashion. It might happen with like 5, 10, 15 t-shirts. But in the end, I would need to have this for each and everything. So maybe there need to be also solutions that aggregate this data and somehow give you just the aggregated results. Do you have any thoughts in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, if you scan the garment and go onto the product page, you see the full supply chain, like all the materials, where they come from, but you also don't have to read it all. I mean, it's a good overview, and you can dive deep if you want, but also it shows you directly which of these products are materials are certified in a certain way, in a sustainable way. So I think you as a user can dive deep if you want, but also you can just get an overview. And a company that we actually collaborate for that with is TrustTrace. And TrustTrace has a very great and robust blockchain system developed of really creating transparency in the full supply chain. And from our perspective, in the beginning, we also wanted to actually develop such a system. But once we saw that, there are great solutions out there, we just thought the best would be to build synergies. And therefore, we worked on creating interconnection between our systems. And so our system is really comprehensive in terms of evaluating for circularity, informing, generating product sites, the whole recycling system, and so on. And TrustTrace is a great addition to it to really make the supply chain even more in depth.
Cool. There is a question that goes in the similar direction, and it says, is it enough to change the production and recycling circles, or do we also need to change the consumption behavior of people? So we go a little bit in that direction, but I also assume it means something else. And we have a lot of debate about the role of consumers, purchasing decisions. What's your point? What's your take on this?
I love this question. Thank you for that.
Props to Anonymous.
Yeah, to the question. Yeah, and so we definitely think we need to prolong the life cycle and to enable recycling. And it all starts at the very beginning. So we do also a lot of trainings with designers to inform them of how they can actually affect the life cycle of a garment and the end of life. So it's not only about recycling, totally agreed on that. And there are many exciting design strategies that can actually also help that the garment would have a longer life. So one example is that, we can make things more multifunctional, creating a modular jacket that has many different parts, for example, and you can wear it at different occasions, makes a garment already much more usable. Also, certain things like repair opportunities. We have seen great examples where, things that are easily worn off, like the color or things like that, can be exchanged after it's worn off. Other brands have offered like a redyeing service. So like everything that actually involves the user and helps them to really prolong the life cycle of a garment. We also try to encourage brands in taking this into account as well.
There's another question from our audience, because that directly links to this. Are established players from the linear model supportive of the transition towards circular economy? You briefly talked about this at the beginning, but how do you perceive this in the, let's say, more traditional fashion companies out there?
Yeah. That's a really good point. Like, I think in the past 2 or 3 years, a great momentum started. Like, I think before that, it was quite a hustle to actually convince companies that this is the right thing to go, and this is actually the only real sustainable solution to go. But like in the past years, many also larger actors took big steps. So we see, for example, like CNA has created a fully like cradle to cradle certified collection, which is a really high certification in terms of sustainability and circularity. And we are also working with other big players, like for example, Hugo Boss or Zalando, and also like H&M, like that have a very traditional business so far, but that are really eager to change. And we really see that they also are convinced about doing it right, and it's not just an idea that they try out for some things, but they really want to bring their business towards a circular economy. And I think this is where it becomes really exciting, because we can create such a big impact.
Yeah, you just mentioned it. Another question that goes in that direction. Have you heard of Cradle to Cradle? You just mentioned it with CNA. Maybe you explain a little bit what's Cradle to Cradle mean, and what's the difference, or what's the role in the context of circular economy?
Yeah. So we describe it always that Cradle to Cradle is a design philosophy and like a mindset, a kind of thinking that thinks in circles. And there are 2 different circles that it addresses. And it tells that every product and every material around us is either in the biological cycle or in the technical cycle. And the biological cycle really enables products to biodegrade, products that are made from either renewable or also like bio-based materials, but also in general like biodegradable materials. And on the other hand, the technical cycle enables products to be recycled. And for fashion, it's actually quite interesting, because we could think, well, okay, all cotton t-shirts are like biodegradable and all polyester jackets are recyclable. But it is even better, because in the past years, there were great material innovation that, for example, brought biodegradable polyesters. So, like the whole story about microplastics can be solved and eased by these developments. And there are also great recycling technologies for cotton. So in the end, like we believe that the most sustainable product would be something that is biodegradable and recyclable. And to bring it into the context of the circular economy, we understand it in a way that circular economy is an economic model, as the name and the term says already. So it's also more about the business models behind. So how can we actually offer services around reusing or repairing a garment and recycling a garment, and how can also like a business be sustaining in the future with unlocking their business model from like material throughput. So not just taking material and selling it and then it ends up in waste, but more generating value with keeping the products at their like highest value.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. There's one question that says, normally at your meetups, there's free beer. Where can I find this? It's bring your own beer to the meetup this time. Sorry about that, but next time we make sure. Cheers, Ina. Prost. Of course, we're not drinking beer, it's just water. All right, very, very good. Thanks for the detailed explanation. I think it would be really interesting to see and also learn what are the big challenges for you now with your approach. You have the digital solution on the one hand, but of course it also relies a lot on physical infrastructure. You mentioned the points where you actually deliver clothes. I have the problem here in Munich. Every time I bring my t-shirts there, it's full. So I go back home, I'm frustrated. You need the store infrastructure and everything. So what are the big challenges for you to really create an impact? Because there was one question here, let me find it, that says many solutions have sustainable approaches, but have very marginal impact on the problem. What kind of solutions have a significant impact on the problem? I think that goes in the direction, where are the challenges to really create significant impact and change the industry?
Super. Yeah, very good. So, of course, in the beginning, everyone thinks like, great, we now have the potential of using digital solutions and this will solve everything. And but I actually believe that the solution is not really only the digital system, but it is to create the infrastructures behind. Because in the end, it comes down to people talking to people. If it's digital or if it's offline, it's about creating those interconnections. And we have a quite diverse partner network. So in the first place, we need to talk to recyclers and get their requirements. Then we have to talk to material suppliers and actually, create with them materials that are healthy and that are recyclable. Then there come all the designers and fashion brands on board. The users who have to bring the clothes back, and then the sorters who have to send it to the recyclers. So like it's a quite complex supply chain that needs to be handled. And I think this is one of the major challenges, to actually create meaningful transparency in there, to actually validate data and so on. And something that we have created to overcome such a challenge is an open source data standard. Because we believe if we create those circularity IDs in garments, right, like these labels that can be scanned, what type of information need to be on there, right? So we actually gathered the input from all the different stakeholders and created a standard that is publicly available, so everyone can basically contribute and further develop it. But also, we allow an exchange on that, and I think this is a very important part of it as well.
That's also a big mindset shift in the industry, isn't it? I mean, fashion is highly competitive. Mm-hmm. Whether that's in fast fashion, I think is even more competitive than other areas, or maybe the same. And as you mentioned, the supply chain is quite complex and quite interconnected. So some of the big players, they rely on the same suppliers. So you, as one big player, you even don't have the big power to change the entire supply chain yourself. So there's a lot of cooperation involved and needed. Do you see much progress in that direction? The competition model, where they're really willing to change something?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there are, you touched a very important point, because to make these recycling technologies, these innovations, to make them actually scalable, we need more products that are defined in the similar way. So if every brand now creates their own label or their own data system behind, we will never end up there. So in that sense, we try to join different brands together on this platform, so they can actually use the same systems for the greater cause. And I think there are also other great initiatives like Fashion for Good, or like the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, that actually tries to bring together fashion brands for pushing for these better developments. Exactly.
There's one question about your solution then, whether that's modular, like the different components. Can some of the elements be used via an API? So it's getting a little bit more technical now in terms of questions, but right. People want your solution. I think that's good feedback also. They are interested in it. So yes, how open are you in that?
Yeah, so this was actually the how we all started. Like from our perspective, we're a social business, and we want to create, we want to solve the root cause. And for us, everything that actually can bring this forward we would love to collaborate with. Trust Trace was just one example of like how we collaborate with actors in the industry that have either similar solutions or that are like complementary to us. And regarding APIs, so like we're also able to develop APIs or like create interconnections with fashion brand systems, because you know, in the beginning we had our design software, and like it's a just usable software, but of course fashion brands have also other software that they use anyway, and how to implement then our material library into their systems. So we explored a lot this field and are very happy for collaborations there as well.
Yeah, there's a similar question that goes in the direction. At Circular Economy events, one of the big topics is knowledge sharing. So how open are you to share your business model, to replicate it and bring it to South America?
Yay! Amazing. No, I mean, we're actually, I'm like, was very early involved with, like, for example, the open source circular economy days. I don't know if you've heard about this initiative, but it's a really great platform where people come together on certain days of the year. And like in 2014, we already like organized certain events around that. So it is definitely a field where we need to share knowledge to actually accelerate the transition towards a sustainable system, because we don't have time to wait and make our own like beautiful solution, and we need to spread it. So I think with our open source data standard that we have developed, it was already like a first step for us to make it more like rapidly available, and that people can actually take it on. And we now see the first brands and also other companies that are actually taking on the standard and using it just like aside of us. And this really makes us happy if we see that being basically duplicated and scaled.
I mean, it's the inherent precondition. If you want to establish a standard, you need to have as many players as possible to adapt to this.
Yes.
Very good. You also have, let's say, different endeavors into different directions. You mentioned there's blockchain-based solutions. You told me a little bit about an AI-based solution that you're currently exploring. It sounded quite interesting. Please elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So basically the idea came based on the fact that it will take a certain time until every garment in the world will have a circularity ID, the ID how we call it in the garment. And so we were a little bit impatient and thought like, okay, you know, we need to identify every single sock that is on the planet and need to find the best recycling technology for it. So how could we do this with all the garments that are out there already and that are not tagged with a circularity ID yet? So we talked a lot with sorters and like identified certain opportunities that with like spectroscopy, we can actually identify the material composition of a garment. And even more than that, we can also identify certain, you know, like treatments that are on a garment, like chemical treatments, etc. So we're now exploring this kind of area together with 2 universities. We're planning to do that with the FU and the TU in Berlin. And so that will be a very exciting journey, I think. We made already like first tests, and it's really interesting. And not only in the field of recycling, we want to apply machine learning, but also in the field of like visual recognition of garments and optimizing second-hand loops. Because a lot of the garments that are returned, they're perfectly in shape. They could be perfectly resold and used again, but the sorters don't really find the right market for it. So if we can basically identify a product in a better way, also while taking pictures and basically connect it to, you know, whoever needs now such a garment, we can also optimize the reuse of it. And actually we're also looking for collaborators on that, and also want to enlarge our team for this topic. So if like you're excited to join us, and that would be definitely an opportunity for like a data engineer, and so would be exciting to get to know you.
So tell me more, what do you exactly need? This is your call to action now to the community.
Yeah, great. So, I mean, anyway, like if you're interested in taking on our like open source work that we have done, like please contribute, shoot over a message if you want to work with that together. But also, like, if you're like experienced in the field of machine learning, like a data engineer, we would love to talk to you and see if you can enrich our team with that. We're actually also looking forward to enlarge our team with a full stack developer, like probably in June. I mean, let's see where this crisis will lead us in terms of, you know, when we can meet in person again. But like, this is something that we're looking forward in June kind of time frame.
Okay, cool. So let's see, maybe in the audience, we have a few suitable candidates who will apply right after. When you mentioned the AI-based solution, and for all of you who are part of our N3XTCODER sessions and the meetups, we like to discuss topics in a, let's say, more controversial, from a more controversial point of view. So let's take another poll and talk about AI briefly. We want to hear from you. So again, go to the poll function, and I want to learn whether you think, Clara will change it in a second. When we talk about artificial intelligence, do you see bigger risks or bigger opportunities when it comes to sustainable fashion? More risks, more opportunities. Vote now. Ina, did you vote as well?
No, I didn't yet.
Oh, you can.
I want to hear your answer as well.
Answers are coming in. So the first movers were very optimistic, but let's give them another minute. Well, looks kind of clear. It doesn't change that much anymore. So 93% say, what do they say? What do you think?
They're optimistic. That's
oh, they're
great.
optimistic, yes. So 93% see more opportunities when it comes to AI in sustainable fashion. Do you share that opinion?
Absolutely. I think otherwise I wouldn't take these steps. But of course, like there were not, like, it's always it's not black and white, and we have to, of course, find also, like, there are some challenges that we need to overcome to actually make it to a good solution. And this is also something that we take on our journey, that we think we shouldn't really fall in love with a solution, a particular one, but that we should rather fall in love with the problem solving, and like understand of, you know, what is needed to solve this problem. And if it's AI and we do it in a certain way that's beneficial, that's perfect. And if it's something different that actually solves the problem, then we need to go a different route. But I think in terms of like circular economy, which is such a complex system and topic, this particular technology can definitely help.
So here's a tricky question for you. Can you give an example how your system could work in the automotive industry? So let's take some advice from fashion into automotive and make it circular.
Sure. So I think automotive is a great challenging industry, since a car like consists of many thousands different of materials. And so it's of course not only the seats that are maybe made from textiles, but then all the materials like metals, different plastic types, and so on. So I think what we really need to consider here is to have a good plan of what went into this car, and like what are the materials in there, and then to figure out a design technology. How can we also separate them? How can we take the seat out in a way and separate all the textile materials from the plastic materials? And I think designing for disassembly could be a very interesting approach to that. So we have certain materials in our library that actually is enabling to separate them. So, for example, buttons that are screwable, or zippers that can be taken off with a soluble yarn. So, if you completely rethink the way that you constructed a product, this can definitely also work for the car industry. Although, of course, it's a bit challenging, but definitely I see solutions.
Okay, very good. Maybe there's one more question. I think that's pretty concrete, so I would take it. A question from Matt. He says that they already use QR codes for on their garments for transparency purposes, currently phase 1. Could we somehow piggyback on that instead of the circular ID?
Yeah, so with QR codes, there is one challenge in the reverse supply chain, because we analyzed like what kind of tags would work for which stakeholders. And for users, of course, it's a no-brainer. You can scan a QR code with your phone, that works. But if you have a sorting company and you need to actually look for the different QR codes in the garments, you lose too much time. So we had the feedback from sorting companies that a QR code would not really be usable for them. So if you really would wish to use, for example, this reverse supply chain network of sorters and recyclers, we would need to find another solution. So what we propose is different other digital tags. One is actually a thread that is has a little chip in there, and that can basically integrated into the seam of a garment. So in that sense, it could be another solution that you could also use. There are also little buttons that have a chip in there, so you can basically sew it into your garment or use this button instead, and this can also inform the sorters network.
Okay, thank you for this. Looking at the time, we're coming to almost to an end of our interview. We have one more poll question, which is an open question. So we now learned quite a lot about circular economy, but we also want to hear from you. And this is like an open poll question. What are the biggest challenges for you now in the audience when it comes to circular economy? Just digest everything that we just heard from Ina. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes. And then we write it down. I'll write my answers as well. Ina, I want to see yours as well.
All right.
You see the word cloud popping up?
Yes, so diverse. Interesting. I need to make it a bit larger here to read all of them.
Get closer to the screen.
Yes. Supply chain, data, standards, absolutely agreed. Incentives is also a very good point. Like in the end, like we need to create a system that is beneficial for everyone who needs to use it. Like if it's a hustle to use it, no one will do it. So really creating positive solutions, definitely great. Trust, also very good point. Like how can we trust the data in the supply chain, even if we make it transparent? Like I think that's really important, like a crucial point of how is the first data actually entered, and how can we verify this? The mindset, absolutely. The mindset of everyone. I mean, it's change. We need to adapt to a completely different system and habits. That's definitely one point.
And definitely maybe there to add, like, as you mentioned, the different players. So it's not just the consumer mindset, but it's really on the production companies, like the fashion companies producing it, the consumers, and then the recyclers. So quite a lot.
Yes.
One thing was still about affordability. So that was one of the last questions that just came in. How can we make this affordable to people who are not able to buy? So how can we make sustainable fashion affordable?
Super. There is, I don't like to make the same example again, basically, but I have to do it because C&A has, as I mentioned, this great Cradle collection, and it is super affordable. So that's the only reason why I mentioned it the second time, but it's like €7 for a t-shirt. And I think this is just incredible that and shows that it is possible. You know, it's like not the only example, but it's a very, very good example since it's so such a holistic certification and still at a very low price point. I think in their solution, they really work with a family business there that has a vertical supply chain, and like everything is in house, like from the farming unto the dyeing of the garment. So there are no middlemen in between that cut out a lot of percentage. So this is very important to really also make the supply chain simpler and so on. But also like other fashion brands reach like very affordable prices, and I also think that in the end it would also be fine. I mean, we need to realize that a t-shirt doesn't have to cost like €3, you know, like there's a human hand involved in actually the making of it. So it's also very important to see this value. It's not machines that does it. So we should also be open to to pay what it's actually worth for. So I think it's also totally fine to have like a little bit higher price point and like rethink the way we consume, and not just have to have like 20 different t-shirts, but really think about which ones do you really need. And actually that would also be a call to action to rethink consumption behavior, and also to rethink whom do you want to support financially. And like buying a garment, you always take a decision. Yeah. And there are also great overviews, like for example, Green Fashion Tours. They have a map of like sustainable fashion stores in Berlin, but also in other cities. So like definitely you can reach out and research a little bit about that there.
Yeah, and there's questions coming in. One question from Andrea, exactly talking about this. Does this include fair wages? And the fair wage topic is something that is massive when we talk about fashion. Yeah. How do you see changes there in the fashion world right now?
I definitely see changes. I mean, we talk a lot about risk management as well. Like the let's say the traditional companies see it rather as a risk management, but I see it as like, you know, it's the most human thing we can do to really rethink what was the supply chain like. You know, how do people work in the supply chain? And it's a little bit confusing sometimes when we talk about prices, that we can't really compare. You know, like a t-shirt can have the same price, but one is a little bit is more sustainable, and also fair wages are involved, and for the other one it's the same price but it's not. So there we really have to look for the standards and certificates that help us to actually identify if something is sustainable and fair. And like there are many great certifications like the GOTS standard that also includes the social side, but also the Cradle to Cradle includes the social side at a certain level of their certification.
But definitely to add there, the fair wages is one of the most complex topics as well, besides all the production elements that we now talked about, because again, there's such a high level of interconnectedness between different fashion companies, different suppliers. You have to take the different countries into perspective and everything. So there is an ongoing debate about the fair wages for years now, and it will probably continue for a few more years until we come to good solutions, I guess.
Absolutely. No, I definitely think that, because, you know, like a minimum wage is not like a living wage, and we need to really take a detailed perspective on that, and really make it more livable for everyone who's involved in that.
Yeah. All right. I think we're coming to an end. Ina, thank you very much for your time and for sharing all the insights that we were able to learn quite a lot from you about digitization, circular economy, and sustainable fashion. Big thanks to everyone in the audience. I think we had great engagement. Lots of questions kept coming in. The one about the free beer, as you know it, normally the meetup is about you to connect with each other, to connect with us, the NXTCODER team. So this was the small opportunity with the Q&A and the poll. What we would like to do now is to invite every participant into our NXTCODER Slack channel. So we have set up a Slack channel just for our meetups. So we will post the link in the Q&A right here in a second. So head over there if you want to talk to the guys at NXTCODER. Ina, you might still be around for a virtual beer there to answer a few more questions. And other than that, we will have our meetups on a regular basis anyhow. The meetup series is a monthly meetup series. There might be more popping up soon if there's demand also from the community. So send us an email, send us feedback, send us more questions also to Ina if you want. I think Ina is happy to collaborate with all of you. We have the call to action for some interesting job postings. And this said, see you on Slack. Thanks again, Ina. High five to Berlin.
Check. Thanks, Leo, and thanks for a great audience and community. Yeah, keep up the good spirit and let's stay connected.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Ciao.